finally all that like set up for this. I think it's been like 3 weeks since we have done this.
Happy New Year, Mervin.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Sal. And Happy New Year to anyone who's listening. Yeah, it's been so long since we did this, and it's like the machine needs oil again. And
It does, even though, do you feel more rested now than you did 3 weeks ago? You made an allusion earlier, saying that you were
I need to edit this.
You don't want that to reveal?
Too long. It's like no, too long.
Like the pause.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I need to edit this.
Editor's brain. Switch off your editor's brain.
I can't. It's like forever turned on already. It's like, it's like, oh no, I have to like sit down here for 3 hours just to edit this after this.
Yeah. Are you gonna be relieved once and again, you're going to have to edit the pause. But are you going to be relieved once this is over and and we've wrapped like the final episode and you no longer have to edit this podcast? Do you think you'd be relieved or ...
I'd be relieved, but I think it's been a good practice, and it's been a good like exercise as well. Like I want to like create and use these kinds of mediums to express myself more often, be it like in audio format or video format or a mixture of like both audio and video formats. And it was like a good run to like practice. And yeah, thank you for doing this with me. I think it's been a good exercise, I feel.
Yeah, I recall you did mention that something you wanted to delve into in 2023 was it more output?
Yeah, just in general to just exercise my creativity in more free manner and not necessarily like KPI driven or like target driven, but just as my own like journal. Yeah. And just to put it out there as well, and like to get something going. Like if I don't like start, I would never get anywhere that I feel like I might be excited to explore. So I feel like I need to get stuff out there so that I know what I want to do next. And yeah, that helps me like get ahead. Because I think I'm someone who thinks too much in my head. And I realize a lot of that is lost when I don't, and I'm not good at communicating that to people most of the time. Yeah.
And as a result, I know you've my first question was going to be, and as a result, what you find happens?
So as a result, I live in my own world. Yeah, and I get stuck in this and too long, and I realize that I'm living my own world, but I'm not like communicating and interacting with other people.
And in your own world, are things completed, and whereas like in reality
no, in my own world it's chaos.
Right.
Inside it's very chaotic. It's forever changing. I'm finding it difficulty to organize, do my own like house cleaning within my mind. That's difficult because it's forever running and going, and I realize that I need to connect with people to help me organized. And that's why you mentioned earlier that like I might seem like I'm good at keeping contact with friends and getting in touch. I think that's my way of like, okay, I need to calm myself down and like organize like my inner world by interacting with my friends who have seen me across a passage of time and can in a way reflect that processing for me so that I have a feedback to view my inner world from.
Okay. That's insight. Yeah. That's insight. Yeah.
And yeah, I do feel slightly more rested. Although and that's the thing. I feel like doing nothing or having a break, which I've been having, causes more chaos in my inner world.
Right.
And I don't feel rested because of that.
because you get overwhelmed, right?
Exactly.
With all the
Exactly.
possibility.
Exactly. And now coming back to routine, like, okay, we have to do this. Then I think this gives me more stability in a way, more framework.
Yeah. Yeah. The more I get to know you and the more we get to work together, I learn that deadlines are how you move through, make progress, and how you
Yeah, I actually need the box, and I need deadlines, and I need framework in order to keep me going. Yeah, yeah. Destiny is actually something that I struggled to write, and not Destiny the track. Both I struggled in coming up with Destiny and also with finishing Destiny, and this was the last song that I wrote, the last track that I wrote in Late Bloomer.
That's new to me, or that's news to me, that you struggled with this track.
I think at that time I didn't need to really interact with you anymore. Like all our tracks together had been done, and so like the struggle was like purely like by myself. Yeah.
It was your own journey that you had to undergo.
Yeah.
So how does struggle in the creative process look like for you?
Well, firstly, because like we had these 4 songs already and the intro, and I knew what I wanted to do for the end, but it was like we needed something as a sort of a bridge in the story rather than just an instrumental track. We needed a bridge in the story of like the whole arc of the album. It was difficult for me to come out with something that made sense as a bridge in the narrative, but also musically stood on its own, had its own character and story as well, and rather than just being a transition track. And so that was the thought process of like, okay, how do I start this? How do I even start with this?
It's interesting that you bring up character, because it does feel like this is it's definitely like a breath of fresh air. I feel it definitely, to me, yeah, it feels different. I in a way that I can't quite express.
And this is one of the tracks that because I wrote it the last, so it's definitely like years after I wrote the first tracks with you, and so the style would change quite a bit. The craft would change as well. The choices that I have would change.
Even like the palette feels like a little different.
Yeah. And this is one of the simplest tracks actually. It only has like 6 or 7 layers total.
As opposed to
like 20 over or 50 over like layers. Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed when we were listening to it earlier, like the beat was quite constant.
Yeah.
Like the percussion.
Yeah. This was a decision that I wanted to like have a pulse throughout that that changed in intensity as it went on, but the pulse, again going back to like the train metaphor, the monorail metaphor, like throughout, like this had to be a train that was like taking us somewhere.
Yeah, it feels vibrant. maybe that's what makes it stand apart. Yeah, it's more upbeat for sure.
Talking about vibrant, I've noticed that like Late Bloomer has and mixing other tracks now and mixing for other people like last year, this year, like I've gotten a different point of reference in terms of like my years have shifted now, and for me Late Bloomer is like it's actually very dark sounding.
Yes, maybe that's why this feels like it stands apart.
Yeah.
Because I don't get that sense from this one. And that's probably for a whole host of reasons, right?
Yeah. And by dark, I mean, just for the listeners, like dark, I mean by tonality, dark. And I've noticed that I favor that dark timbre or tonality a lot, especially in the earlier tracks. And then currently I'm like learning to not be so dark, because dark also means muddy. It's difficult to be dark as a color, but still have the sound cut through. It can very easily be dark and muddy. Yeah. Destiny was something that I chose to sort of like mix differently and bring in, like, especially for the percussion, like to add like filters to it that would bring out the higher resonances of the higher frequencies, the resonances in the higher frequencies, and which resulted in it sounding slightly brighter. But I'm sure like before before Kin Leon did the final like mix and master, like it was still quite dark. Yeah.
But in terms, what is the synth or the instrument that you used?
It's a can't remember. It's if I'm not wrong, it's just the Buchla easel from Artura, and it's just a emulation of like the Buchla synth, which is quite a classic among the synths, and I'm trying to use it as a voice. Yeah. Why do you bring up that synth?
Again, because it's to my ears at least, it's unique. Yeah.
The synth melody itself was one of the first things to come out. So when I remember exactly like what came first for this song, because there's so little layers. So it was just the driving bass line, which comes from like Omnisphere, another synth, and that's just like one simple patch itself. And then this sort of like Buchla melody that's a little bit strange, a little bit modal, that came immediately on top of that pulsating bass line. That's what the song wraps around. So everything, the percussion sort of like works around this like synth melody as well. Yeah.
It feels, I don't know if you recall making this comment to me, but you talked about its anime influence.
Okay,
okay.
I don't recall that.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that has stayed with me, like the the theme song that plays during the episode of like the battle, and maybe like when like the main character like the Naruto rallies,
I wonder which anime was I referring to.
Yeah, what were you watching at the time?
I know the title has a clue, but I can't remember like what inspired it. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's what has also fed into my impression that Destiny feels rather triumphant.
Yeah. I think also because Destiny was meant to, like, as a bridge in the narrative, it was meant to represent that blooming, that bloom within the narrative. It's like late bloomer and like where do you bloom? And for me, this is the transition to Lion is where like you make that like the time skip.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the happy montage. I mean, it would
Yeah.
make sense because where we leave off in Retriever, it's about how this became a masterpiece. So it is a very affirmative note to end on. And I mean the title's Destiny, which is your doing.
Oh yeah, this is one of the few songs that it's
that is
Mervin
title. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
So I mean, do you remember what went into that?
I remember it had to do a lot with how I felt at the time of writing, because I remember clearly that I chose this title because of how I felt at that time, but I can't remember what I felt at that time. Yeah, but it was something like to do with what I felt in that time, which like compelled me to like, okay, this is the title, and then Convergence as well after Lion. Yeah, I remember these two were like the two tracks that I named, and then I pass it on to you, and then I ask you like, okay, I've just come out with these names for fun first, and like you can decide later on, and then you chose to keep these.
Yeah. Thought they were strong single word titles.
And I do think of this. If I use single word titles, it means that I can't use these words. I can't use these words again in another song title, because within your catalog, like you can't have two of the same. Like
This is a tangent, but you don't usually do one word, right? Like that's not your thing.
No, I actually like one word titles, but I don't want to waste my one word titles a lot. So I use them sparingly.
But why would they be wasted though?
Again, because like a word is so special, and if you use it on something,
right? That's now you can never use Destiny.
Exactly, or like Entity, or like
Entity remains to this day not only my favorite song, but like my favorite title. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's so good. I wish I had come up with that. You know what I mean? Yeah, Entity's a good one. Entity's a good one because also it's not a common word. And yet, it evokes something, you know? Yeah.
What were you doing around the time when I was writing or completing Destiny? Because Destiny was the last track already. I think you had like lost hope that Late Bloomer would see the light of day.
I was celebrating. I was celebrating my, getting to the end of my part.
Yeah. I remember you were relieved.
But in all seriousness, I in my mind, I frame it as me having passed the baton onto you. I felt like, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, to go through the timeline together, like once we had that round of feedback sessions, we both went on our way, and I feel like I kickstarted or restarted the songwriting process again, because I tunneled back into essentially rewriting.
Yeah, stripping away. All the old.
And because this time I had all the tracks, right? Like the foundational layers to work with, whereas I feel like previously
we were writing it together, and
yes,
sometimes not one came after the other.
Exactly. It was all WIP. So this time I had more of like a bass.
And
then like for months, it was, writing and then coming back to the studio. And then that's when we would work together on the track and shaping it. And I genuinely loved our sessions in the studio together because I felt like it was such without even having to explicitly say it from the start, they were so inherently or rather instinctively collaborative. Because I would come in a little nervous with like my notepad, be like, oh, I have something new this week. Or I remember. Oh, this is fun because I remember like there would be weeks when I would be so excited to come back in to show you what I had, because I would rewrite stuff and then I would come in, I would do it, and then you would be like, yeah, that that doesn't work, and then I would be crestfallen. But then that's what made me truly appreciate that time and those moments, right? It was that that sense of honesty that we didn't have to how do you call it?
Second guess each other,
or more like we didn't have to like worry about each other's feelings.
Yeah.
Because it was ultimately always for the best of like the art, right?
Yeah.
And I for the record, like I always appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed writing the songs together with you and experimenting with weird things in the studio, and it's all like process, and I think that also stems from like us building a workflow from working on your film before already, and like going through the post-production for that, and it's very very similar. And I think once that understanding was there, it was easy for Late Bloomer.
Like
in terms of like the trust to create together was there, so it was easy to we no longer have to like think about that, because we already understand that and we are aware of it. It's not that it's dead, but we are kind of aware of like, okay, where our baselines are and where it's shifting, and like that has already been cleared up, or that has, we are sort of like in tune with that. So it doesn't matter if like sometimes like where the sensitivity changes, it's fine because we're in tune.